always best practice to try and have a partner or a work buddy or something to do that with, just another set of eyes. Because safety in numbers too. I think a lot of conflict. With bears, it is actually groups of 1 to 2 people. Again, we're on a farm. It's kind of a different context because you will have this open space with usually clear lines of sight, especially if you're out in a field.
You also use radios.
You use radios.
Yeah.
You have them. Yeah, that's great. That's like part of a safety protocol, and I think my next point was another one is just being aware. It's kind of a good practice, I think, anyways, when you're working in a place where human wildlife conflict is a potential. Just kind of have your wits about you as you're going on. You hear noises, have a look, keep your head on a swivel. Sometimes there have been instances where people are approached or even attacked from behind by a bear with no prior warning or no prior instigation or anything like that. It's very rare, very, very rare, but it can happen, so it's always good to just have a little bit of awareness of your surroundings while you're out there.
That's what I was going to mention is, like, I don't really understand the conflict part because I spent lots of time in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Most bears will always just almost like go around me.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and that's
had a
fair.
conflict.
I mean, I've had a lot of near conflicts like that too, where black bears, and you hear a lot of people say black bears are relatively docile or tame, or they you clap their hands and they run away, and like frequently that is true, but also there are attacks though, and there are, like, especially in like areas like this where there is maybe food conditioning or something like that happening, because it can change bear behavior. And so a lot of the times when we talk about in more like urban, suburban, sub-rural environments, if you are dealing with an animal that has been habituated or food conditioned, it might not be as docile. It might be very direct, and it might be, that's what a lot of that habituation term is about, is they get used to people, they'll come right up to you. There's an incident recently in North Vancouver where there was a bear black bear hanging out along a walkway where literally thousands of people use this thing every way.
Yeah. I used to live in North Capilano, right there at the Cleveland, Cleveland Dam. It was just like walking up.
Oh yeah.
Capilano Road. In the traffic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't care, right?
But they know when garbage day is.
Yeah. Oh, they certainly do. Yeah. They're smart. And they. Anyway, this one in North Vancouver took a swipe at multiple people lately, like literally right up to them, and I think I might be wrong, but I think the lady was eating an apple, or she had coffee or something like that, and it was like literally trying to like swipe it out of her hand. So we got to think about these things, about our impact that we have on these animals with this habituation and food conditioning. It does change their behavior and lead to conflict. As far as some other best practices on the farm, I'm not sure if you really have like a safety plan or a check-in procedure in place, but it might be something to talk about, even as loosely as sort of defining some bounds around radio communication and that kind of thing. That's more Guy's department, but I'm sure we can talk about that as well. And bear spray. You did say you have bear spray on the farm.
Yeah,
right?
the bear spray and bear bangers out in the field
bangers,
there.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at them.
Yeah. So bear spray is definitely the more proven method of preventing an attack. There was some studies done that showed that bear spray, when it was used, it prevented an attack like almost 100% of the time. It was over 90% of the time, and most of those instances ended without injury, either from the bear spray or from the bear at all. So bear spray is very, very effective, but it should also be used with a little bit of training, and that's something else. Like I'll talk a little bit about that right now, but we do have some more involved bear spray training, and that might be something you want to do at the farm too at some point. I do have cans of inert bear spray here. This is inert bear spray because it doesn't have the capsaicin, the pepper spray in it, used for practice and for testing and stuff. But I brought this just to kind of show and I'll give you a brief overview because I do know that you have one. You have one pen. Is that right?
That's what I'm told down in the field.
Yeah.
We'll have to go take a look.
Yeah, for sure. And there's probably some things that we want to think about. One of them is for storage and transport. They have these totes, which is a it has like a foam inside, and the can goes in, and there's foam on the lid, and it seals up, and there's actually a hole in here. But what happens is if it accidentally gets discharged or were to explode, or for whatever reason, all the hot stuff gets squirted out into the foam in the middle and gets absorbed like a big marshmallow, and the gas has a little way to come out here. So and I think it would still be a little bit spicy, say if you had it like on the car seat in front of you or something like that, but would probably save you from crashing.
Right.
And that's another thing, is that it should be always kept, if not in the trunk, as far away from the driver as possible, and in one of these things. And best practice with bear spray is also to have it on you and have it accessible too, which is, it's, if you get into a bear counter over here and the bear spray is on the other side of the farm, that's, it's not going to work at that point. So if you're sharing one can, I don't know, I might suggest having one person who's out there as some sort of designated.
Well, we have it's in it's just inside the gate.
Yeah.
So the bear would be outside the fence.
Right.
And so basically the logic was is you see a bear, you go head over to the gate.
Right.
And grab the bear spray and bear bangers, and that's presuming that the bear can't get into the garden.
Yeah, sure. And like that's better than having it somewhere else.
Okay.
Ideally, best practice is to possibly have somebody with a holster there.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with the holster is that it's very accessible. They say that to really prevent an attack, especially in bears advancing on you, you need to be able to grab your bear spray and get the safety off and release it within 2 seconds, basically.
Right.
So. Yeah, that could still be totally possible if a bear is trying to enter over here, say, and you can get to the gate. But if the bear is trying to enter the gate too, that might be a different situation.
Do you think it would climb the fence?
I think it can. What type of fence is it?
It's a deer fence, 6.5 feet.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to say no because they are really good climbers, and with enough motivation, they can be pretty athletically incredible, right? So.
But why would it want to come into the garden, though? Eh?
Well, I think there's some truth to that. I think there's probably other attractants that are around that would, like if you have fruit trees, berry trees around, especially as we move on in the season, they're probably going to be more attracted to that than to your, whatever you have in the pen there. But it's not an impossibility. Always, right? They're wild. They're wild animals. There's a certain degree of unpredictability for sure. So with bear spray, I'll just go over briefly how you would want to use it in a situation. I'm going to be using my holster. It might not be in a holster there, but there's obviously some same points that are going to apply. So actually, maybe I'll go a little bit about the encounter stuff first, because it's kind of the encounter that would judge whether you would want to use it. Bear spray is not it's something you use in an acute moment if a bear is approaching you and an attack is imminent. It's not something you use in a preemptive manner, like you're not going to spray your clothes or spray your tent or the gate or whatever with it, right? It's only to be used when an attack is imminent, because they don't have a lot, they only shoot for a handful of seconds, and you really want to be able to just get that right in the bear's face, and you don't want to shoot it while the bear's over there, because it's not going to work. It's going to disperse before the bear even approaches you. So we'll talk a little bit about bear encounters in particular, because I think that's the most likely one that would occur on the farm. So when we talk about bear encounters, they talk specifically about two types of behavior, defensive behavior and predatory behavior. So defensive behavior, as an example, would be, say you're hiking or you're out here and a mother bear and her cubs is crossing, a sow and her cubs is crossing, and for some reason considers you a threat. So they might exhibit some defensive behaviors. Defensive behaviors for black bears look like they do like huffing. So they'll do this like deep kind of like huffing, heavy breathing, grunting or moaning too. They might stamp their paws or do bluff charges, like little fake charges where they kind of like, what's up, you know? And the drooling as well. They might drool a lot or just generally seem agitated, stand on their hind legs. You know, you can sort of see at that point that this bear is like exhibiting some agitated behavior, and it looks distressed. It's checking you out. It's doing all these different things, and that's because it's trying to defend its cubs, and it's starting to give off some warning signs, basically. And that might not happen just with cubs, but it can happen with kill. Like maybe a bear is feeding a deer or something like that, and you stumble upon it. They'll be very defensive of kill too. So, or other food, even if it's on a fruit tree, you know, it might be trying to defend its food. So, you want to be thinking about these defensive behaviors and just trying to remember that. Really, you're not going to be like in a situation where there's like a bear right there and it's like doing a bluff charge at you. You're not going to be like, this bear is exhibiting defensive behavior and I'm going to do this. You know, it's just more of like a thing where you're going to like be, oh, I remember this, you know, like that's defensive. This bear is like agitated. Clearly it's making noises, it's checking me out, it's stomping, whatever. Defensive, there used to be this kind of old paradigm or this old kind of pattern of talking about bear attacks and what to do in a bear encounter. And it was always like, if it's a black bear, lie down. If it's a black bear, fight back, and if it's a grizzly bear, lie down and like protect your neck, protect your stomach, kind of thing. The sort of more updated model of that is more to do with behavior rather than the type of bear. So if it's exhibiting defensive behavior like we talked about, you're going to want to fight back and stand your ground. And if it's exhibiting predatory behavior, which is what we'll talk about next, that is where you're going to I don't want to mess you up. I just got this confused. If a bear is being defensive, you want to lie down, because what the bear is thinking is that you are a threat. So if you lie down and play dead, that bear is potentially going to think this threat is neutralized. I don't need to do anymore and leave you. And predatory, which we'll talk about next, is when you would want to fight back, because at that point you need to convince that bear with everything you have that you are a threat to it, because it's trying to eat you, it's trying to consume you at that point. So predatory behavior looks very different from defensive. Defensive might, like we just talked about, a bear might be, you know, like agitated, not exactly coming straight at you, but exhibiting all these behaviors and drooling, etc., etc. But with predatory behavior, it might look more kind of just like this, like coming at you, not stopping, not taking a break. It sees you, it's advancing straight towards you, and if you are saying, okay, move over this way, and the bear just keeps following you and is advancing on you, that's probably more an example of predatory behavior, where this bear has decided that you're something that it's really interested in eating, and it's just coming at you, right? It looks very different than predatory behavior. So I'll just go over that part again, because sorry for the I got confused in my own brain as I was saying it. But defensive behavior is when, if there is an attack, you didn't have bear spray, it came to that point where a bear came up to you and pushed you down on the ground, and you knew that it was some kind of defensive behavior, you would want to try and play dead, remain still, because there's a better chance that the bear is going to think that it's neutralized this threat to whatever it was protecting and leave you alone at that point, at which point you could get to safety as soon as you knew the bear wasn't in your immediate vicinity. And predatory behavior is that bear is coming at you. This is where you would definitely use bear spray if you had it on you. Any methods you could to try and get the bear away from you. And if it came to the point where the bear is attacking you, then you want to fight back as much as possible and just fight for your life, basically, at that point. Not to really freak people out, bear attacks are really rare. It works out to less than one death every 3 years in the whole province of BC, and because we do have up to 250,000 black bears in the province, and we're not even talking about grizzly bears here, which can be much more aggressive, especially when they're protecting something. Bear attacks are very, very uncommon, but conflict is not uncommon. We have tons and tons of black bear conflict around here, so that's uncommon. Conflict, definitely common. So I'll just talk a little bit about what might be the best thing to do in these kind of encounters. So say you I don't know, say you're working in here one day or whatever, and you just walk out and there's a black bear right there. It has its back turned towards you, its head is facing away from you, it's doing something in the bush there, it doesn't see you. So if a bear doesn't see you, the best thing you can do really is just to try and make that a reality, make that reality continue. You don't want that bear to know you're there. So if it's at all possible, you'd want to be able to back away slowly, try not to make noise, and just get out of there, create distance, just wanting to create space between yourself and the bear. And as soon as you can make enough distance for yourself that you feel it's safe, that you can turn and get even further away, then that's what you want to do. But you also want to still be aware. You want to be checking over your shoulder, making sure that bear hasn't noticed you, hasn't
You don't want to scare it away?
Well, if it's not there, there's a whole conversation around, like, that's what they call hazing a bear, when you're scaring it away, or when, like, that's what bear bangers are too, it's called hazing. And you can, lots of people do it, right? People do it with deer, people do it with bears, like, that are in their yard. It's not always the best idea because they are unpredictable, and you might not know what the situation is there, if it is protecting cubs or something like that. So loud noises can be, well, that's the point, right? They're alarming to them, but you never really know which way they're going to react. Like, there's been instances where people have used bear bangers and it caused the bear to charge right towards them. So
that's true. When you see them in the tree, because I've had yards where there's 3 of them living in the tree. Yeah. Mom and cubs.
Sure. Yeah.
And they just live there and you just kind of leave them.
Well, yeah, sure. And I mean, there's this kind of, it's a bigger conversation than all this about how, because there's a lot of people feel very emotionally about bears too, and like having bears around. They're beautiful animals, obviously. We're all trying to protect bears. You don't want to see them destroyed, but sometimes when they end up in conflict situations like this, some of these practices are kind of the best way to avoid getting them destroyed and avoid getting them into further trouble. In the wild, totally different story, where they have lots of space and they have their own thing. But when they start getting into conflict, especially in these urban areas, it's unfortunate, but it often just leads to their destruction. So some of these things are just kind of best practices. And part of that one, walking away, is just kind of letting the bear do its thing, right? So, and like hoping it will just kind of move on. If it's munching on like all your Starbucks panini wrappers in your garbage at home or whatever, then like it's a different story, because you might want to try and haze it. But they do recommend leaving that for the conservation officers, because they do it in a kind of scientific and a procedural way, because they want to try and make sure that when they try and scare that bear away, it doesn't run into someone else's yard, or run into traffic, or all these. There's a lot of different considerations, and you never know exactly which way the animal's going to go. This is actually like a science in campgrounds. So like they do this in campgrounds, right? And conservation officers are always called out to campgrounds in BC because of bear activity. So often they do haze them out of the campgrounds, but it's done in a way where they can anticipate and kind of plan how they want the animal to move through the campground and direct them. Yeah. So it's a consideration to make. Like, I'm not going to say that bear bangers don't work, but they can have a more unpredictable response. So just something to think
when you're
about.
out in the forest, I guess this might be old thinking too. Like if you're taking a hike, it's best to make some noise.
Certainly.
Some people wear like a bell or something that's just clanging while they.
The bells have kind of been more recently sort of, they don't think it's the best idea because the actual timbre of bells, like how high pitched they are, doesn't carry well through the forest. And also bears don't associate that sound with human activity necessarily. So it's much better to actually like clap your hands, stomp your feet, sing songs, like you yell and call out, like as you're going out there, it's like, hey, I'm out here too.
Bluetooth speaker?
What's that?
Bluetooth speaker?
Yeah, maybe music might be more the one too. I think they really, bears, most of the ones that are around town probably associate the human voice more with human activity than anything else. So I think using your voice is probably the best way, clapping your hands. Music will definitely alert them too, but depending on the speaker too, like I have a little Bluetooth speaker, and there's, just like with the bells, it's such a high-pitched sound, like it's so thin, there's no bass in it, that like I might not be cutting through the forest in the way that you think that it is as you're out there or whatever. Just a little food for thought.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, that's, especially if you're like in the bush, like I go hiking with my little daughter all the time, and sometimes we get into spots where it's like, there's a lot of trails here that are abandoned, overgrown, whatever, and like, you're coming around and like corner and corner and corner and you can't see anything, and when there's no visibility, that's kind of especially when you want to be making that noise, because you don't, basically, especially if it's a sow with 2 cubs, like you don't want to turn around a corner right on them, especially if there's a kill or something else that the sow is going to protect, because that can be a pretty tricky situation, or that's pretty loaded with potential for it to go wrong at any rate. So we talked about these different behaviors, and so let's talk about preventing an actual attack. So even if it is predatory or if it is defensive behavior and the bear is getting close enough to you that you think it's going to be an attack and that bear is going to make contact with you, best practice again would be to have bear spray on a holster. They say you're meant to be able to pull it out, get the safety off, aim and everything, and do it within 2 seconds, because bears can run super fast too, and they'll advance on you very, very quickly if they need to. So bear spray, we have an acronym that is called SPRAY, conveniently. So SPRAY stands for stop, and that's where, again, what we just talked about, maybe you came out and you see an animal, and this animal knows that you're there, and it's exhibiting defensive behavior. You're still going to try and make space first. You're going to talk to the bear at that point. The bear knows that you're there. It's a good idea to talk to them and use a calm, soothing voice, and just start to make space immediately and say, "Hey bear, hi bear, I know you're here. I know I'm here too, but I don't mean any harm. I don't want to be in this situation. I'm going." And you want to just keep making space and making space. And if that bear is allowing you to make more and more space, that's excellent. You want to keep using a very soothing voice. You don't want to invoke what's called like a fight or flight or like a predatory response in a bear. Turning and running is not the answer. That can definitely invoke what's called a predatory response in a lot of predator animals. So if there is, turning and running can flick a switch where suddenly they're going to start chasing you as well. So ideally, you just want to create some space. You want to be calm and collected and not panic, and talk to that bear and move away. And then as soon as you're able to create some more distance and create more space by turning and moving quicker, you want to do that. But again, you want to be super cautious, and you want to be checking behind yourself and being very aware that that bear is not following you, or that part changing into predatory behavior where the bear is coming straight towards you at that point. And then predatory, same thing. You're still going to just try and create that distance. If you see a bear across the field and it's just making a beeline right for you, same thing. Keep your eye on it. Start moving away. Start trying to get towards someplace where you can be safe. And to which point the bear would be right close to you is when you would want to use bear spray. And bear spray, so we would stop. We would assess the situation. So if the stopping and assessing the situation is like where you would want to be like, is this defensive behavior? Is this predatory behavior? How close is this bear? What is the situation? Do I have to use bear spray, basically? So sometimes you can avoid having to use it at that point. The P in spray is prepare. So that's the next one, and that's where this bear's there's a potential situation here. This bear is not ignoring me. It's maybe exhibiting defensive behavior or predatory behavior, so I'm going to get ready. So prepare looks like this. You would take the bear spray out of your holster like this, and just have it up, have it ready to use it. The R is for release safety. This orange clip on the top of them, it's always a different color than the black on the rest of the can, is the safety. You need to reach your thumb up and over this, like all the way over to get it off. You can't slide it from right here or anything like that. You need to have your thumb way up and over. So you'd be like this, and pop the safety off if you fall to the ground or whatever. So that's P, prepare, you're ready. P and R, release the safety. So you're pretty much ready to fire at this time. The A is for aim and build a wall. It's a little bit of a funny one because it's got the two A's in there. But to aim, you're actually going to start aiming down as this bear is coming at you. About half a car length away in front of you, aim towards the ground. And then as that bear is approaching, you're going to build a wall, which is to press the trigger to fire and bring the spray up, basically to the bear's face height. So, and that burst of bear spray should be about 2 seconds long, which is like a bit longer than you might tend to do it for when you're in that situation. It's kind of like 1, 2. You want to have it go like, and get a good amount of spray out there. So you're going to start spraying it to the ground and lift it up. It's called build a wall. What that does is make this big sort of vertical cloud start to happen in front of this bear that the bear is going to have to walk through to get at you. And then once you've done this, the Y in spray is for yield, which is just where you want to take a few steps back from the spray itself and from the bear and be able to kind of assess if you're going to need to spray again. And this whole time, once you've done that, you're still just trying to create space. Like I said before, bear spray has been proven to be very effective against bear attacks and other wildlife attacks too, cougars, wolves, etc. It's not just for bears.